discuss autonomy without looking critically into the tiers of government you want to have in a federal republic, then you are putting the cart before the horse.
They say the Constitution provides for 2.
Good.
And so 2 it is.
Good.
2 it will be.
So that means that Constitution is contradictory to the extent that it provides for 2 tiers of government and wants to confer autonomy on local government as another tier of government. Then that's the problem. In all the federal republics that I know, and without any spirit of immodesty, I've done extensive research on federalism. Hey, you either want to practice federalism or unitarism. Make up your mind. If it is federalism, 2 tiers of government, federal, out there, depending on your aspiration, depending on whether your country is fractious, whether it's divided, whether it's plural, that will determine the kind of central government you're going to have. Okay? And then another tier. It may be regional, it may be state, it may be local government itself. So the challenge is that we're trying to create 3 tiers of government because some guys want to also create a fiefdom for themselves at the local government level. It's about money coming from Abuja.
You know,
and then we must get it right.
You know, I think last week when we talked about this with some couple of analysts in the House, they drew the nation's attention to what is in the Constitution, which you just also highlighted. Federalism, 2 tiers. Now we have a 3rd one now that does exist. So if we are to speak constitutionally, it looks like we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing.
Sulai, don't refer to what you have in the Constitution. If that Constitution were to be serving our purpose, there will be no need for us to want to amend it.
So in other words,
let us discuss about what ought to be in the Constitution and not what is in the Constitution.
That is why they're calling for the review, I'm sure. Perhaps if you were to look at that in that direction, when we also talk about grassroots development or governance, how can you key that into this particular review of the Constitution to make it something more legal?
Okay, let me you know my position. I've said it here repeatedly, and I also think it bears repetition. This Constitution amendment is a journey to nowhere.
Really?
It's going to be cosmetic. And money shows the light, they say. You have seen discordant things from the Senate, the House of Reps, and don't forget, you still have to take these proposals, as the case may be, to all the state houses of assembly. I can tell you, we have wasted our time. We have wasted resources. What you're likely to achieve when you juxtapose it with the efforts, the money that you are putting, you know that it's inconsequential.
But you know, the last time they did something with this, with respect to amending the Constitution for INEC during that elections, it sailed through in record time. And everybody felt, okay.
If you want to amend the Electoral Act, it's a different thing. I'm talking about the fundamental law of the land.
So
as far as INEC is concerned, mostly you're going to amend the Electoral Act.
Couldn't they latch on to that same principle and that structure which they used at the time to say, look, again, duty calls, let's do this?
There are so many contending interests. And therefore, the more we try to amend this incurably flawed Constitution, the more we run into troubled waters. And that is what is happening now. Now, look at the issue of underage marriage. I mean, we're going to be fair to the Senate. That was not what they did, for God's sake. Section 29 of Section 4, A and B, stricto sensu, is about a woman that is intent on renouncing her citizenship. It's got nothing to do with marriage. And there's so much hoopla in town. You know, I'm an inveterate critic of institutions that are not working. So, if you hear Bisa Degbe defending the Senate, you may want to wonder, oh, what's going on here? I'm a public analyst. I'm supposed to analyze issues based on extant constitutional provisions. Marriage is a separate matter. Why should we be talking about marriage in Nigerian constitution, for God's sake, when you have cultural diversity? it is this same mentality of one size fits all. And that's why, I'm sorry, what kind of a country is this that we can't even do? Look, presidential system of government, if you want to practice it, look at other jurisdictions where they have successfully practiced it. And then look at your local peculiarities and then adapt it. Look up in America. Local governments in America are controlled by the states.
You know,
because the states have their constitution.
How did we get here in the first place? You remember then when we had the colonial masters then, even though some wouldn't want to call them that by that, but they were here and they actually had so many local authorities they were working with at that point in time. And when they left, it looks like we continued and we tried to see how we could put that into our own democracy. We tried to democratize what they did then. Perhaps if we were to go by the way a true federalism should be and now say, let the state control them, how can that kind of control be incorporated into our own democracy?
The way to go about it is simple. Identify the fundamentals, 2 tiers of government, and then leave states to determine whether they want to have 1,000 local governments, 500 community development centers, as the case may be. It may interest you to know that a state in America has as many as 6,000 local governments. Pennsylvania, Texas, whereas some other states don't have more than 200. I've mentioned it here. Let's say it again. Brazil has 5,564 municipalities, the functional equivalent of our local government, whereas those municipalities are development centers, however, are mostly stealing centers.
Now, I recall very clearly that you mentioned, Brazil the last time you were here, and you recommended that model for us. I mean, you said, if I remember very clearly, you said we should go the way Brazil has gone and we should have municipalities instead of states, since everybody is clamoring for states. Maybe we should have more local governments, as it were, and that from the federal, you go to the local governments.
Get it right.
Am I correct?
You're correct to the extent that you're talking about devolution of powers. Mm-hmm. Don't be confused about whatever name they give to local governments. In UK, you have, they call it council. In the US, county. In Brazil, municipalities. Here, local government. What is important is the quantum of power and the influence that you give to local government. I submitted at that material time, based on Nigeria's peculiarities, the major problem of Nigeria today is the need to keep Nigeria united at all costs. For whose benefit, I don't know.
Isn't it for everybody's benefit?
Maybe not necessarily so.
Okay, so you suggested that for the sake of unity.
Yeah.
One would think that we were on the way there now that local governments are going to have their own autonomy.
Unity, when you have ahead of you vicious contests for power between the north and south, and you're talking about local government, and you're talking about unity.
So this does nothing for development.
Certainly not. It's about who controls the resources that have been allocated to local governments. Whether it's 8%, whether it's 3%. That's a fight about, look, Argon or NULGE, NULGE, will tell you that they want autonomy for local government. But Nigerian Union of Teachers,
so they don't want it.
They don't want it because they know their members will be put into jeopardy. Their interest.
Now, Suleiman asked us to, go back to ask the question, how did we get here? How do we begin to speak about autonomy for local governments in the very first instance? What has happened over the years that we're now saying, no, we think local governments should actually stand by themselves?
It is the concentration absolutely crazy concentration of power at the